Hey friends, it's Kalo here and I'm building a startup. This is the third video in the series that I call Encore, building my second startup from scratch. Last video I spoke a bit about coming up with startup ideas, and in this video I'm going to talk about actually how I approach researching ideas with some specific examples. And the next video I'm going to talk about customer development and talking with people. So these are weeks 1 and 2. I'm currently into, I believe, week 5. So these videos are a bit behind my actual timeline, but I try to keep as much as possible to bring that content for you. So first thing that I usually do when I start with researching ideas is to create a project where I'll organize my research, customer feedback, and so on. So the thing that I currently use is ClickUp, but it doesn't really matter whether it's ClickUp, Notion, or something else. And I can show you a specific example here. So for each idea, you can see here. So what I usually do is I run small sprints of anywhere between a few days to maybe a week or 2 weeks, sometimes longer, validating the specific ideas. So Project 25 is my code name for the current idea, if you're wondering what P25 is. And then you can see I'm currently on my third sprint of validating ideas, with the 2 previous ideas being already validated. And for each idea I have a bunch of tasks. So whether specific things, whether I need to speak with someone, research the idea, collect feedback, or something like that. I have a table with the feedback that I've been collecting, with different things that I collect for each person that I speak to, whether they are an ICP. Usually the type of people that I speak to are either experts or potential customers, so I make sure to note that when I record their feedback, the position, the company they work at, the business type, of course, any contact information like LinkedIn, emails, and so on. And then I make sure to highlight what problems I found when I speak to them, any specific notes, recording. For recording, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in the next video when I discuss customer development, but for recording I use Fathom, which is a great app, and also Granola for taking notes. And making sure to be on top of, so it's essentially a CRM for customer development, making sure to be on top of the things I need to do, and whether that I've spoken with them, contacted them, and so on. So I'm not going to dive into the specific examples here right now. Maybe in the next video I can talk a bit more about that. The next thing is I do a bit of research on the competitors. And I usually recommend that you dive deeper into this stuff once you already have at least some minor type of validation or interest into the idea. Otherwise, you're kind of putting the horse before the cart. So I wouldn't go into too much of a deep research. So I'm just mentioning this now so you have an idea of how I structure my research. So I have a competitors table with a bunch of things that I collect about each competitor, like the pricing model, the description, you can use like in Notion and Airtable and other tools. You can use AI to scrape the description of the company. So in this case, what I do is check website and explain what the tool does in 1-2 short lines. No need to include the name of the business website or start with this tool. Just jump straight to what it does concisely. Try to highlight something that makes this tool unique. So for example, in this case, it was an idea about digital sales rooms, DSRs, and you can see one of the competitors, Doc.us, enables sales teams to create personalized digital sales rooms for sharing content, tracking engagement, and collaboration with buyer in one place. So just having a bird's eye view of what is the tool about. And also make sure to keep to highlight whether a competitor is a direct competitor or not a direct competitor. and then some marketing data, which is not that critical. This is at this stage is more for me to gauge whether it's a big competitor or a small competitor. Probably the most important thing is what's the actual USPs of the competitor, what are their weaknesses, and then what I usually do is, again, I use ClickUp recording to go and do like a UX UI video of me using the software for the first time, where I share notes with my notes of using the software. So for example, for DocUS, you can see here I go through the
so review
marketing
of DocUS, which is like probably
website,
Salesforce.
then I go in through the actual app and I just keep notes of that. But again, this is something I usually do at the later stage. I'm just sharing this with you so you have an idea. Then I have a bunch of customer development questions that I try to keep track of. To be completely frank with you, when I jump into calls, I very rarely dive that deep into these questions. Usually I would find in the next, like the first couple of minutes, that a customer is whether or not a good fit, or potential customer is whether is not a good fit, or it just the conversation goes in a completely different direction. But these questions, they give me a good idea of like what are the things that I need to keep in mind, and then implicitly try to read between the lines of what people tell me, and figure out whether this is something relevant to them, and generally whether the lead, or the person that they speak with is a good fit for that potential idea or problem. What I recommend here is to just ask ChatGPT to write customer development questions that follow the MAM test structure. For people that don't know, I've shared in my previous video an article what is the MAM test. But in a nutshell, it's a objective way to get objective insights from customers without biasing them towards your idea. Next, I do a lot of customer research, and I will talk about the different frameworks in a bit, but this is essentially where I do my own research. This thing here involves a lot of chatting with ChatGPT and collect any like brainstorming ideas, any questions, any landscape overview research, and so on. So the next thing after, so this is the structure I keep in ClickUp. For each idea sprint, I do another project and I just duplicate it, and then you can see here for the other sprint I've also collected some feedback. I haven't reached right in the competitors, but I just use this structure, and you can just take this as a template and then duplicate it for the next idea, keeping things organized and ready for you to collect data. And the good thing about ClickUp, but also with Notion and most of these tools now, they have the AI brain, so you can ask your documents and all of the feedback that you've been collecting, and you can ask specifics about it. Frankly, I don't use it that much because I remember most of the research that I've been collecting, but for a bigger project that could be useful. Now, next thing I wanted to talk about in today's video is, before I jump into the deep research and how I research ideas, what are the things that I look for in a SaaS business before I even consider researching the idea. And this ties into the previous video of how I come up with ideas. First things first, it needs to be a recurring subscription business, so software as a service. I prefer B2B. Usually with B2C, unit economics are much harder. I don't specifically have that much experience in B2C, so B2B is again where I'm aiming at. Founder product fit is crucial. Is this something I'm excited to work on? If I ask myself, is this an idea that I'd like to work for the next at least 5 years, and maybe even be open to working on that idea even if the business is unprofitable for the first or first or second, I want to say 30 years. By 30, I generally aim to be at least at break even, at least based on my personal experience. But certainly there could be like 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe a year where the idea is unprofitable, generating revenue but unprofitable. So if is the answer yes? So in other words, is am I excited to work on something that goes and an idea beyond making money and be generally and genuinely excited in the actual idea? So another thing which is I believe crucial, fragmented. How fragmented is the market? Are there any behemoth, huge, humongous competitors in the space? For example, with marketing automation, these were Salesforce, Marketo, HubSpot. So kinda we didn't check that mark with Encharge, but when I look for ideas now, I definitely look for something more, a market that is more fragmented. So for example, if we look at cold email tools, of course, there's like for lead generation and orchestration, we now have Clay as the number one behemoth in the space. But if we go outside of the orchestration or lead gen space for like cold emailing, there isn't like quick, clear, big winner. Maybe other spaces, other like spaces, for example, could be like Facebook ads, digital sales rooms. One of the other ideas that I researched, there isn't like a clear number one humongous winner. This is usually also because of the total addressable market, which is generally smaller with some ideas. So there isn't that unicorn established player. Once you get a huge established player in the space, and they've been in that space for 5-10 years, which in startups that's like dog years, they're a dinosaur. So they usually will not change. You cannot disrupt that space. You can carve out, at least based on my experience and what I've seen in the last 10 years that I've been using softwares and building software. But usually you can carve out a small pie, but you cannot disrupt that much that space. And of course, sometimes it happens, but very rarely. So the other thing, ideally should be a single point solution. I don't want to build micro SaaS solutions. I've done that with Breezemail, something we sold for $5,000 on acquire.com, something we worked on for a few months. It was a single point solution that was categorizing your emails into folders with a semantic language. So it's a small tiny SaaS product. It's not something I'm excited about, doesn't engage me much. I want to work on big ideas. It doesn't have to be super innovative or anything like that, but I prefer bigger ideas. Small pain to validate. What is the barrier to entry in terms of validating and building an MVP? With again marketing automation, what we did with Encharge, again another thing that we didn't check. The barrier entry to entry was extremely high there, with established players like HubSpot with billions of small features. I would prefer something easier to enter. Is it more than AI wrapper now with ChatGPT and Claude adding more and more features and consolidating the AI space? Is this going to be something that goes beyond a simple AI wrapper? Another thing, what is the trend and timing? Is it good? Or at least it has to be not against, it doesn't have to have an anti-trend, at least. So good example now, last 3 days ago, Shopify announced official partnership with ChatGPT. They will be allowing people to purchase directly from the ChatGPT interface by using prompts. So this is a good example of trend. An example of anti-trend would be SEO, building a tool in the SEO, the traditional SEO space with the formal round, AI overviews, and ChatGPT eating Google search, it's a bad time to enter a traditional SEO space. So okay, maybe I'm not riding the wave with the trend, but I don't want to be building against a trend, or building something that's old, that people are afraid now, that they're looking in a different direction, they have FOMO, they're looking at investing more money current into the current wave in the specific space. Another thing, not aiming at enterprises. I don't have any connections with enterprises, so I won't be the right person to sell to enterprise. So these are the 10 characteristics that I generally look when I'm evaluating ideas. Now the next thing is the frameworks that I look and try to implement before diving deeper into an idea. The linear canvas, some people have already probably heard of that. The 5 p.m. framework from Rob Walling, and then something that I developed myself, which I call the strike framework. And I'm going to give you briefly an example of those frameworks so I can see it in practice. So again, with my digital sales room idea, if I go here to the idea research, the linear canvas is something I highly recommend people to go through. Again, do not put the horse before the cart. Make sure you have at least some sort of validation or some sort of pull before you dive deep into those frameworks. And the idea of these frameworks is not for me or for you to sit heads down for a week and think about the idea. It's something you do like in 20-30 minutes, just to quickly get an overview of the idea. The linear canvas is a simpler version of the lean canvas. So it starts with who is your customer, how you will qualify and identify early adopters, how do they solve the problem today, and what are the early adopters' top 3 problems. So it's focused on the segment, on the audience, and on the problem. You don't think about marketing channels, you don't think about business models, all these things. And Ash Maurya, the creator of Lean Canvas, has some really good videos on that topic, so I highly recommend checking it out. And you can see with my digital sales room idea that I've highlighted the audience, account executive BDRs, and a secondary segment. What is the problems, the top 3 problems that I believe, this is hypothesis for my problems. When I did the course after that, I identified they're not really that much of a problem for most people, but that was my hypothesis. So just jotted down 3 potential problems, hypothesis for problems, existing alternatives, and then what is my unique value proposition, one-liner of how I will solve that problem. The other framework is the 5 p.m. framework by Rob Walling from MicroConf. So it's the problem, then is the purchaser, the audience, the pricing model, the market, is there a product founder fit, and the pain of validation. Another example here with the DSR idea. So jotted down the main problems: color information, bar champion struggling internally, trial to paid conversion stalls, onboarding handoff is broken. How important is that? How urgent is that? Are people currently searching for a solution? You see here I used Google Trends to identify whether the specific topic, the keyword, is growing or not growing. And it usually, when it comes to Google Trends, also very helpful to compare to an adjacent space or a broader idea in that space, so you can see, because trend doesn't necessarily meet demand, right? So the trend could be increasing, but if you're starting with a tiny trend and even if it increases like drastically, then it still could be tiny compared to a bigger idea. And you can see here, this is an example. Digital sales rooms are tiny as a space compared to sales enablement, sales asset. You can see how much higher these are compared to that. Then again, who is the purchaser? What is the ICP that I'm currently targeting with specific examples? And as you can see here, I've actually used ChatGPT for that. I recommend not using ChatGPT at this stage. Think about it personally, and then you can use ChatGPT for some inspiration to flesh out the ideas, but just brainstorm a bit on your own before you ask ChatGPT. But of course, you can just after that just take the framework and say, I have this basic idea, so fill out this framework for idea research, and ChatGPT will do the work for you, which it does a great job of that. What is the pricing model? What is the market? I would say this here is more of like the total addressable market, and also the type of companies that will potentially buy this idea. Is there a product founder fit? I already discussed that. And the pain of validation, how hard it is to validate the idea. The next thing is my own framework, which is a bit of a combination of Lean Canvas and the 5PM framework, but also a sprinkle of my own added here. So what is the specific job to be done? Does the product have a clear job to be done, both for the customers, my potential customers, and their end customers? And then you can see here an example. When I'm selling SaaS to a lead or trial, I want one personalized page that adapts to their profile usage and objectives, so I can shorten the sales cycles with more deals and smoothly onboard them with internal consensus. And then the job to be done for my prospects, so for my customers, the evaluation. When I evaluate the SaaS tool, I want all key info, and so these are specific two jobs to be done. Sorry, this is for this is for my customer, and this is for the customer of my customer. Then the problem. Does the product solve a real problem? Is the problem widespread across the target market? Is the problem expensive or urgent enough? Then I answer these questions, try to be as objective as I could, but it's hard, when you have an idea in mind. Is there a clear audience? Are there pain points and use cases well understood? Is the audience reachable and willing to adopt the solution? Most of these answers you will not know at this stage, but at least you can guess. Investment in resource intensity. So how much time, money, and effort we need to spend to get the first product out? Is there automation potential? Is the product solving a repeatable, annoying, intensive task that people do on a daily or at least weekly basis? In this case, the answer was yes, because it was automating collecting data such as trial usage stars, demo recap decks, and digging up case studies, security docs, testimonials, etc. Do we have any 6 point? Do we have any unique skills or resources or a modes that we can use to stand out? Which kind of ties in with the competitive advantage here. So these are the frameworks that I use. I will try to share this folder with you, so you can use those frameworks for yourself. But as you can see, they're pretty straightforward. Have some initial validation before you jump into filling in all these frameworks. Or if you fill the frameworks before that, try to keep it simple. Do not spend more than an hour on that. Now, the next thing is the deep research, and I found ChatGPT to be a great assistant in giving you a landscape overview of the idea or problem that you are targeting. And I've spent a ton of time going back and forth chatting with ChatGPT about all of these ideas and validation sprints that I did. This is a great article that I will share in my blog post on. So it's an article by Thorsten Wohlbaum. It's a very detailed explanation on how to do better deep research. a couple of tips that I suggest. First thing, make sure to create a project in ChatGPT with your idea. So for all of my sprints here, you can see I have a separate project. This helps ChatGPT contextualize, get the context, and saves me from having to write the context every single time I have to ask a question about a specific idea. The next thing is to have briefing template to use for the research. This is the template I use. I will share that in my blog post. But it guides ChatGPT on how to do deep research, and I will recommend two approaches here. So the first approach, just give full freedom to ChatGPT, because it will give you information that you didn't know. So keep it like super brief and simple. I'm doing a deep research on this idea, and then ask ChatGPT to answer. It will use its own judgment on what type of information to give you, what approach to take as far as the research goes, and so on. And then the second approach is guide ChatGPT to give you the answers to the questions that you need. And in this case, I use this template outlining the strategic goal, why I'm doing the research, what would success look like from this report, what is the product concept and scope, so explain your idea here, what is the target use case, what is the USP, what is the target market, what is the competitive priorities, rank the following in order of importance for your research: technical capabilities, whether there's a technical barrier, business model, go-to-market strategy, customer base and adoption, security, compliance, others. Hypothesis and pain points. What do you suspect is missing in today's tools? What pain points have you heard from potential users or customers? Report preferences. Now here you explain what will be the end output of the research, whether it's going to be a quick landscape, deep dive, or investor grade. And you can of course ask ChatGPT to give you all of these. And what is the format? And this is an example here with the latest sprint, latest validation sprint that I'm currently running, which is for enterprise search and knowledge management platform for SaaS businesses. The strategic goal that I enter is to validate if entering the market with a B2B SaaS specific enterprise search and providing actionable critical insights about customers would create any appetite in the market. Success would look like if I collect tangible, quantifiable research data that indicates that there is a potential in the market for such a tool, find any indications on unique selling points, unique features, positioning, and angle to enter. Also, if I understand competitors much better. The product concept and scope, then I explain here the product concept of this specific validation run. Again, I'm going to share that with you. What is the target market and competitive priorities, the customer base, the technical capabilities, the go-to-market. These are my hypotheses and pain points that I believe. Report preferences, and then I just give ChatGPT that, and it gives me a very detailed answer. So let me see if I can find an answer here. So below is proposed search plan, so it gives you the research plan given your intake, and then and that's actually something I forgot mentioning. It also helps if you start with the key insight recommendations before going into details. Use overview tables or visuals instead of text blocks where appropriate. So the idea here is to ask ChatGPT. Let me enter that here. To give you an overview of what the research plan will look like before actually doing the research plan. I know that Gemini is pretty good at outlining those plans, so you can use Gemini for the planning and then copy paste the plan from Gemini into ChatGPT. to actually get the research. And then you can see here, it gives you very detailed planning. Then you can make some changes, fine tune that plan. It gives you, it also shares the deliverable, the outline that it will produce. And if you're happy, then you say, oh, good, create deep research, and then it starts thinking about the research. And you can see here, it started with the executive summary, the quick landscape, one pager. There's a lot of mentions here. And then there's the deep dive. Very, very helpful. I will share a link to this conversation so you can actually see the whole process of deep research. All right, next thing. After the deep research, what I usually do, and maybe let's go with the Reddit research first. So I tried Reddit research, probably you've heard about that. There are a couple of tools, maybe not a couple, maybe a couple dozen now tools that do Reddit research. One of them is Gummy Search. Another one that I found is Big Ideas Database. I will share links to those. Now, I spent some time on that, and it didn't resonate with me. I couldn't find any tangible ideas. So the first issue that I have with these tools is there isn't much of a statistical data importance. So for example, let's say with Gummy Search or with the Big Ideas database, it says there's this specific problem that people on Reddit have. And then when you dive into the actual problem, you see that it's just a couple of people or like one people mentioning a problem, and that could be something that resonates with you, and maybe you can find us, you can dive deeper and then you see other people having the same problem. But for me, I couldn't resonate with the ideas. There wasn't data statistical significance. The problems were quite vague, or often people think they have a problem but they haven't actually looked for a solution. But by all means, try them out. They're fairly cheap tools. So you can see what I've done here. I've looked at a couple of audiences, digital marketers and salespeople. So for salespeople, for example, and for each type of audience, you have hot discussions, top content, advice requests, pain and anger, solution requests, opportunities. So for example, with pain and anger, you can see you choose a community first, so that's how it goes. So for salespeople, I've selected two subreddits: sales scripts and sales, which is the biggest one in the space with 500,000 people. Then you can see the topic trends, and then the themes, which is where I found the most value. So you can see here popular discussions in this week, and then if you click on pain and anger, you can see what pain people experience in that subreddit. Are expressing feelings of dejection, frustration, and depression due to struggles in finding new roles, disliking their current jobs, and facing challenges with product interest and industry alignment. And then you can dive deeper here, where I can see the patterns and so on. So it's interesting. There is some information and insights that you can extract from these tools, but overall most of the problems and ideas didn't resonate with me. They were too vague, so I didn't find them very helpful. And that same thing applies for the Big Ideas database. It's a collection of different lists with update ideas, with problem ideas. This is the one that I was looking at. I went through probably 100 to 200 of these, and you can find some interesting insights for sure. But then again, once you do the dive deeper, you can see there, for example, here there's only 2 source posts that mention this problem. So is this really a problem? And then when you start reading the actual post, the actual comment of the person, you're like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe a problem, but it's not. the AI, the LOM is too positive on extracting information because its goal is to find problems. So it kind of finds problems where there are none. So you need to be really careful here with that, with those types of tools. I've also looked at other databases with ideas, but yeah, I couldn't find anything tangible, anything that really enticed me to spend more research and time on. It's also this approach here, the Ultimate Guide to Building Reddit, is probably more, um, will probably get you more results than using the tools. It's more of a manual approach on how to identify subreddits and then look for problems, see what they want. So the problems, their motivations, their actions, what recommendation do they ask for? Do they keep complaining about something specific? If you are trying to achieve their goals, what will make it easier? And then it gives you also an example. So if you go with Reddit, maybe this might bring better results, but by all means, give it a go and try. And now, last but not least, the last piece of the research is G2 analysis. Once you have the overall landscape research from ChatGPT, once you filled in the frameworks, I did a deeper competitor research, and the easiest and most productive way to do that was for me to scrape the reviews of a specific product, or if there are multiple competitors, then all of them. I used Outscraper for that. And in Outscraper, it has a built-in G2 review scraper. So you paste in the link to the product, and in that it then gives you a CSV file with all of the reviews, the user, and so on. It's very cheap also, probably like $5 for 1,000 reviews scraped or something like that. And then I download the CSV and then I put it into ChatGPT, where, just give me a moment to find this, G2 review analysis, where I ask ChatGPT to do a analysis here, highlighting the objective of the analysis. It's a grounded analysis. So what we're looking for here are patterns, and then you give it a bit more context on the category of the product and key aspects for the grounded analysis to extract. So the common pros, cons of the product, themes, patterns, sentiment, comparison, suggestions, structure of output. You want it to be in bullet points, summary tables, so something easier for you to review. Tone of the audience, and then optional things like categorized by company size and the feedback that is by company size and industry. Another important thing here that I highly recommend you do with this type of research in ChatGPT is to share these critical instructions. Be specific as possible, be objective, and do not be overly positive about user reviews. Show specific examples and quotes to illustrate your points and explain your reasoning. Because again, similar to the problem with these tools like Big Ideas DB, is that ChatGPT will be overly positive on the actual problems. In this case, for example, if you're trying to extract unique selling points to compare your to stand out versus your competitor, ChatGPT will try to find those points, and it will latch to a small quote. For example, just one person asked, mentioning, "I have problem with UI." For example, with trumpet in this case that I'm researching, and then ChatGPT will say, "Okay, people have problem with UI. You need to create you need to create a simpler, better looking tool, and that would be your USP," which is completely false. There's just one or a couple of people mentioning that. So you want to make sure that the actual feedback and the grounded analysis is objective as possible. And I will share that prompt that you can use in ChatGPT as well. So a lot of information for today. Hopefully you find it useful. That's the way I approach data research. When I share the actual example, I will try to share the ClickUp project with you. You can actually see the ideas that I've been researching, or at least one of the ideas. I will make sure to share, and you can see my approach on how I research them, what are the actual answers that I got in ChatGPT, and so on. Because I didn't get much chance here to be super specific as far as the ideas, but if you think that you want me to share a specific example and go through a specific example of the research, then please share in the comments or DM me, and I will record another video to do that. If not, then we'll see each other in the next video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about customer development and how I approach talking to people and what mistakes that I did, and what I'm trying to do with as far as talking to people to validate ideas. So thanks again for taking the time. See you soon, guys.